I've started the screen share. Let me know if you're able to check with that or not.
Yes, we are able to see it.
Okay, please go on mute, everyone. From now, let's start with UiPath basics day 2. Okay, and then we'll be going with legacy again, and we'll be working with selectors with UI automation, and we'll go with UiPath selectors. Okay, let's go ahead and create. Okay, in the first day, we understood about what are variables, what are arguments, how can we check with different types of links that are available in UiPath. Okay, so I am expecting that everyone who are uh, attending my session right now are having the login for cloud.uipath.com or any kind of UiPath login, and you are able to join with your UiPath Studio installed. So that's my expectation. So let's continue date UiPath selectors. So we'll go again with, okay, let's go close all videos. Okay, UiPath docs selectors. So these are in detail, we'll check about selectors here, but more than selectors, we just need to understand the structure of how all the elements and how all the things will work. There are various types of selectors, if you can see. um, Full versus partial selector. Okay, greedy search. Okay. So on the left side, if you can see, yeah, I hope this is getting recorded. Yes, this is getting recorded. Okay, now on the left side, if you can see, we are going with this particular link, and I mostly follow UiPath docs because that is a single source of truth we can follow, and which will not have any confusion. So the main important window that we need to understand is UI Explorer, that we'll see later. But if you can see the types of selectors, we have full selectors and partial selectors, dynamic selectors, and there are regex and non-greedy case sensitive selectors. These we can see later, like these are not covered, or these will not be covered now. What we'll see is with the dynamic selector, UI Explorer, and selectors with wildcards. Okay, and here you go. So about selectors, sorry, so let's give out paste text only. Okay, now about selectors. So what exactly is a selector? See, now if you want to represent me, or if you want to tell about me or tell about yourself, then how will you tell about me? For example, let's try to ask someone, uh, Kirtan, can you please unmute? Kirtan or Mahadevi, can you try to unmute and talk?
Yeah, Vajra.
Yeah, please speak a bit louder. So, if you want to tell or introduce or recognize me, what are the characteristics that you normally tell to others?
To recognize any UI element,
Me.
you means
It's me.
your name, your
Okay.
name, right?
Okay. My name. Okay.
Mm.
And what else?
Your name, and gender and location. You as a person or as an employee?
So you're asking these questions again, like there are various factors.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll be just working with the dictation, this will be easier. So to tell about someone, we need to tell about their properties like the name, gender, or where are they from, what do they do. So all these things, if you can recognize or if you can tell these characteristics of a specific person, then you can identify that person. Okay, but for UiPath to identify any particular item or any particular element in one particular place, you can identify with those with the characters, with similar kind of characters or characteristics, or you can also tell that there are some properties which you can use to identify any particular element within our window or within our automation or within our OS, whatever you can tell. Now, to represent or to show UiPath selectors, the main thing that we are going to use is UI Explorer. So go to UiPath and click on UI Explorer, and this is what you will see. Okay, and let's check. So if you see on the left, there are different, this is a tree basically, this is a desktop, and a desktop is having a tree. This is similarly like if you want to tell, like if you want to introduce yourself to someone, but that someone knows your parents only, not you, then how can you introduce them? I'm so and so person's son or daughter. So that's how you will represent, or that's how you will tell about yourself. In the same way, this is a complete tree that is given by UiPath for us. All you need to do is go ahead and identify a proper selector, whatever you want. We will use calculator, so this will be easy. We'll use calculator as one option, and the second one as web selectors, that is using that will be using browser. So what is calculator? So there are two types of applications that normally we have. um, Two types of applications. First one is native application, and the second one is Citrix environments or desktop, remote desktop, and any kind of or browser websites. So all these are non-native applications, or we cannot access them directly, so we need to have some source to access them. But using native elements, we will be able to access them directly. If you can see indicate element, I will be able to access each and every element. F4 function F4. Let me just go with again. So why am I not able to select? Okay, let me just indicate it again. So here, if you can see in Teams, we are able to select each and every element. In the same way, we should have it for calculator as well. I'm not sure why this is not getting generated. Let's change this to, let restore default. I'll check indicate element. Okay. Maybe we'll go with Notepad. This should work, but if it is not working, then let's go with Notepad. Notepad. So if I can indicate an element, so if you can see, I can indicate on the top bar, there is one particular item. This is having something called file edit view. Okay, and if you can see, this is the place where we write something. So this is the place where we write. Not sure why this is not getting activated. Active accessibility indicate function F2. Yeah. So if you can see, we are able to select each and every element within this particular notepad. And how are we going to represent, or how are we showing this, is what matters. Now if you can check with the items, or if you can check with the values, this is complete notepad. But within notepad, what do we have? We have window and editable text. So if I click on highlight element, so this is what we can select. So before even going to all these things, let's understand UI Explorer first. What exactly is UI Explorer? See, UI Explorer is a place where you can identify selectors, and you can identify which selector is under which item, and you will be able to understand or see its properties. So a UI Explorer will have few things, few important things. On the first, the left one, we have UI Explorer. What do we have? We have visual tree. So this will be a complete map of all the elements for a particular application. Okay, and the second one is selector editor, and the third one is property explorer. No need to check in detail about all these things, because you most of the times you will not use them, and you will just continue, or you will just get habituated to use them. So selected items. Okay, so a visual tree is a place where you can showcase, or just a second, decrease internet. Okay, if you can see this property, visual tree, here we have everything that is related to notepad. I can just open my notepad and keep it aside. So if I can just go to property selector, if I can click on visual tree, and this is used to enable highlight element in real time. So if I just click on something, it will just show me where exactly are the things and how do we have them. So this is menu bar, this is title bar, menu system. I can just click on menu, pop-up context. So what do we have in here? We have something called restore, move, size, minimize, maximize, close. So though it's not visible, we still be able to select what are those items. Okay, item, close F4, alt F4, separator, maximize, minimize, all these things we can select. Now client untitled is the complete window, and if you can see, there is status bar at the bottom which you can target, and again this status bar has different properties. Okay, now if I want to select one particular item, like this is what I want, then this comes under editable text. This is a editable text place where I want to add the information, or where I can add information for. So if I want to write data, or if I want to add information to this notepad, then first I need to identify where I need to write. I'll just add something called write text, or write line, type into. I'll use type into to add some text at a particular place. So here we have properties. Okay, and manage packages. I will try to degrade or downgrade the packages so that this will be easily understandable. UI activities, let's go with 2020 update. Save. though we will be learning on the latest UI activities as well. But first let's understand few basic concepts, then we can check that later. Meanwhile, while it is okay, we got it. So just go ahead and type into. So this is asking me to add it in application browser. So let's go ahead and add application browser or application attach window. Application. So use application or browser. So I need to indicate this particular element, and here you have the target. The target is notepad. If I just go ahead and select notepad, you will have different properties updated, like okay, this is from this particular location, Windows Microsoft Notepad, and your application have some arguments, or if you want to select it. But here if you can see, this is the selector. Okay, so everything that is a Windows application will have a prefix called window. Just remember that. Selectors prefixes. All Windows applications will have a prefix window, and all the browser applications will have something different. We'll see that later, but this is having window. Now if I want to type into something, type into, I can just give the selector. The target is what I need to map. Target input, I can just give out the target from here, and I can map it over here. Okay, now all I'm trying to do is, don't select fuzzy selector for now, image for now, just only select the selector, and this is the selector that we are having, rich text editor, and validate. This is getting validated. Now press F, confirm to confirm. So what exactly can we see? This is the selector that we need. Click offset is nothing, but here the main important concept is selector. This is the parent. So if I want to identify this editor text, I need not select everything. The parent is already known. I can just represent like, okay, this is the sibling, or this is the son, or this is the doctor, or you can just say after notepad you have rich editor. Okay, so rich editor is in the notepad. So first go to notepad, and in that just go ahead and type into rich editor. Now here we can just type into the values, hello, data. Okay, so this is a static value for now, but if we are going to add a variable, this will be changing. So let's see if this is getting updated or not. So it's selecting a particular item, it's just typing into some value. Now if you observe, before adding an item, this is not having a star, but since we have updated this, or we have written something, there is a star that came in place. Now if I just go ahead and edit target, or if I can just go ahead and edit target on screen, or cancel, or I can just add edit target. So I can still validate this one. If I can just click on this one, it is still getting validated, but just click on confirm. Let's go with this one, edit selector, show highlight element or selector. Yeah, so now this is having an invalid symbol, the red symbol. So why do we have this valid as red symbol? Can anyone please comment out and text me? Tell me, why do we have a red symbol? So
Can you please show me that edit selector once again?
yeah, this is what
What
we
it
have.
is there?
This is the selector and this is the notepad, and yeah, I'm waiting for your text. Why is it in red and why it is not in green?
There we have the title. We have the star
It is
mark.
not there in the name in the selector. Okay, name, if you
Title.
can, yes.
The if you can see in the selector title,
Mm-hmm.
we have in the notepad we have the star mark untitled, but in
Mm-hmm.
the selector it is only titled as a untitled.
Okay, so if you can see, the valid symbol is not available. The main reason being, here in the title we have untitled notepad, but in the notepad when we started typing, this star came in, so this became invalid. Okay, in our docs there are details about the statuses, like what are the 4 types of statuses that we have. That is validate. Okay, see this one, these are important to know and understand. Paste. Okay, so these are important to know and understand. If it is in green, then we will be able to work with the data. If it is in red, that is an invalid selector, we cannot work with it. If it is in yellow, this is a modified selector, then we need to revalidate it, and this is valid, selector is being validated if it is in this star. So if you can just see, or if I just go back to UiPath and if I just add a question mark here. Okay, this is in yellow symbol now, and what that yellow symbol meant to be, yellow symbol meant is we just modified something and we just need to validate this one again. So I will just validate and this became green again, so this is now valid. Okay, now why did it add star or question mark here? Why did I add question mark here? Because if I just add a star, then it will be working fine, right? Then why are we adding a question mark? So that's the question.
Because in the notepad, you only have a single character which is missing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
maybe to replace that.
Okay. Okay. It replaces only one character. Okay. Fine. Okay. So there are something called wild characters in our selectors. Okay. Now here you can see selectors with wild characters. So there are 2 types of wild characters. Okay, the first one being question mark, the second one is a star. Okay, if there is only one character, if we know as a developer, if I know and if I understand that there is only one item that is changing continuously, then question mark replaces one item only, 0 or 1 item. Okay, so let's go ahead and just remove this one. So this became empty again. Now just go back to UiPath and just validate it again. So this is still valid, though we don't have a star, this is still valid. But if I just go ahead and remove this one, question mark, validate, this is valid. But if I try to start adding something, this question mark added, validate, this is still adding. Why? just hit on edit selector again. So now this is not valid again. So why? Because we have a star. So if I know that there is only one place that it will change, then I will go ahead and validate with or check this while character question mark. The second while character is star. Okay, so when I add star, now this will replace 0 or any character, any number of characters after it. So how can we validate or verify? So if you just see, this is untitled notepad. If I just press Ctrl S, we will save it. We'll save it at documents. So day 2 is the name of it. We'll just save it. So what this became, instead of untitled notepad, this became day2.text dot hyphen notepad. So when I try to validate, now I'm not changing anything. I'm just using the same. This untitled is still there and notepad is still there. But what is static here? Hyphen notepad is static. So whatever that is changing, we'll just remove that and we'll just validate it again. Highlight. Now if you can see, everything that is there before notepad hyphen notepad is replaced or it's exempted, and we are validating only with notepad. Validate. Okay, now if I try to debug again, this will still type the values. Okay, now a quick questionnaire for you all. So today we'll go very slow, just bear with me. Okay, or just tell me. So other than question mark and star, do we have any other wild characters? So other than question mark and star, do we have any other wild characters? Yes or no?
No, I don't think so.
You have to conclude, better type in every time you are unmuting. Please type in the message. Okay, so the answer is no, that's correct. There are only 2 wild characters we have in this particular or in UiPath. Now we have something called full selectors versus partial selectors. So all these are interview questions. Now if someone asked you in an interview, tell me about selectors, you can just tell that a selector is a representation or selector is an identifier to map any particular element and to work on that particular element. Now there are 2 selectors, like full selector versus partial selector. Full, partial. So we just need to understand what is a full selector and what is a partial selector. Now, if I am telling about me through my elders, then I am representing as a full selector. Or if I just tell about me as my name is Vajrang and I am a UiPath developer, then I am telling only about myself and it is sufficient. So that is a partial selector. In this particular example that we are trying to do, now if you go with this selector, okay, so can you just see, just wait, edit selector, or you can just go with selector, highlight, validate. Okay, type into rich text editor. So let's just edit the selector. So let me just save it and see why this is not coming in. Window selector. Okay, this is window selector. So if you can see, there is window selector that's updated. If I just remove this and hit OK, now this window selector is the parent and this is the partial selector. Validate. or why it's not getting selector none. Okay, so if I have this particular element edit target indicate on the screen, I can just map it again, anchor. So this is not a fuzzy selector and this is not an image. I can just use window selector and I can use it, and target element is this one, confirm, edit, or you can just see with this one. So now if you can see, we don't have anything on at this level, like notepad we don't have this particular value. This value we are getting it from the parent. This is the parent from where this is trying to get the value, but from parent it is navigating itself to editor, rich text editor. Okay, now you tell me whether application is a full selector or a partial selector. Whatever we have selected here, is this a full selector or a partial selector? Okay, I'm talking about application. Just go ahead and see. Okay, so this is a full selector because we are representing using the container. Okay, so this is the main container from where we can go to the next item. So this doesn't have any prefix or previous items, so this is a full selector. Now with this one, hello, this is a partial selector. Now how to make this one also as a full selector? How to make a partial selector as a full selector? Go ahead and reply. You need to be quick, please. We'll take enough time to learn these selectors because these are very important, but please be quick. How to make a partial selector a full selector? Add selectors from the container. Yes, that's correct. If you can add, or if you try to add, if you go back and if I just add the item, okay, validate. Now if I can see, this is control editable text, but I'm not getting the parent from the sequence, or you can say the parent. It is having its own selector with parent and it is having its own value to identify itself, and if I click on highlight, it's able to identify the correct item. So this is a full selector. So to make full selector, if any item is having its parent as well in the selector part, like window or browser, anything, or if it is able to identify with the complete its own selector, then it's a full selector. Whereas in partial selector, the parent will give its selector to identify the children, and a children will have only the item that it is required to identify itself. It will not have the details about its parent. Then we can treat the children as a children item, or the child item as the partial selector, or child item is having the partial selector. To map a partial selector as a full selector, we may need to give the parent selector as well inside the selector item. Then we will convert the partial selector as a full selector. Okay. as full selector. So all the notes that I'm giving is very important in terms of interview perspective, or you can, if you can just have it, if you want to have a quick walkthrough before you go to an interview, everything will be useful. So don't miss this. And there is something called dynamic selectors. So what is this final item called dynamic selectors? Can anyone tell what is dynamic selectors?
If the selector is not stable,
Mm-hmm.
so you can customize it maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is a dynamic selector?
So assigning a selector to a
To
variable
variable and
so that we
and
can use it we can use anywhere we want.
So it's not
Variable
assigning,
or arguments.
it's not assigning a variable to a selector, but in between a selector, if we have a variable that changes.
yeah. To I mean, instead of, because it's repeatedly changing, so we don't know it's going to change, right? So we just give the name which can dynamically accept the value and accept.
Exactly. So if you can see here, this is day2.text, and we have replaced everything, including the star. Okay. Now if I go back to my selectors, so this is where we'll have dynamic selector. Now instead of having a star, if you can see here, this is star, editable text, notepad, and star. Okay, this is what we are generating, right? But what if we change this one, selector, instead of star, if I can give like something called question mark, just to make sure that the star comes or may not come, and day2 dot txt, if I can just give validate, or if I can just hit on repair, or like I can just keep a space. Now if you can see, this is validated. Okay, now what can change? This day2 can change, right? Okay, if I want to add one more notepad again, so I will just add Control S, and I will just change or add day1 and save it. So what is the difference between these two notepads? Day1 and day2, right? So if I just change this one, validate, or why is it not getting validated? Maybe the question mark, day1.txt, validate, repair, and I will select this one. Let's see. So this is having a question mark in the beginning. That's the reason it's not selecting. But if I can just validate it like this, this will validate still. Okay. Now if I change this to, okay, I'll just save it. Notepad, day1 and day2. Just observe. If I change this to 2, delete, validate. Now what is dynamic between these two? This number, right? Only this number is dynamic. So if I can change this number as a variable, what I'll do is match the exact title and variables, and here file name, str file name. I will always prefix the variable type, so this is the best practice. So this is day2 dot txt, or I can just add day2 and then just leave. So if I want to change this selector, here the selector we have, so instead of having day, we will need day2, validate. No, this is getting validated. So instead of this day2, I will add something called choose a variable. I'll choose a variable. I'll select this one. So what it does, it will identify or it will add the prefix day2 from the variable and it will continue. So I'm not adding a selector completely in a variable, but I am just using a part of the selector and I'm changing them dynamically. So that is the reason we are having this particular value. And if you can observe, we are, if when we are converting or when this is getting updated, this is adding a string dot format, and that 0 will be replaced by str file name. But if you can just see it, this is what we have: notepad, file name and the value. So if I just go ahead and change this value to 1, okay, now which one will it select? Will it select 1 or will it select 2? Just type in the message. Now I have changed the variable to 1. Now which one select? Day 1. Okay, it will select day 1. Let's highlight. Now it's selecting day 1. Now what if I remove this one and if I select it? Will this work? Why is it not working? Why is it not working? I have removed the 1, or I have removed 1 from the variable. It is still having day, txt, everything. Yes, because we don't have any notepad with title day.txt, so it's matching the exact value that it need to map. Now if I just uncheck this one, this title value debug, I think this will still work because based on the fuzzy selector, but not sure. So what is the default timeout? Like how much time will it wait to find a particular item? This is one more important interview question. How much time will UiPath wait to identify any particular item? 5 seconds is wrong.
30 seconds.
Yeah, Naveen, that's correct. So Lalita 3 is wrong. So it will wait for 30 seconds. By default, UiPath has 30 seconds as its timeout. So if you can see, it started with, okay, it started at 12, 9, 13, 16 seconds and ended at 47. So between these two, there are 30 seconds gap. Okay, so it waited for 30 seconds. It's not able to find item by within 30 seconds and then it thrown an exception. So this is one more important interview question. Now, if I want to just add, or irrespective of what 1 or 2 it may be, if there is something with starting with day, just go ahead and work with it. If I want to tell something like that, then in this I can just go ahead and add edit selector. I can just add a star over here. So when I add a star, it will just add day and number can be anything. Highlight. So why is it selecting 1? Why it's not selecting 2? Can anyone tell me? Because when I add star, it can also select 2, right? Why is it selecting 1? Why not 2? Okay, default. It's not default. What it is trying to do is it is trying to select the topmost element or the most active element. If it's finding something with this, it's giving. But the problem that will come with this particular approach is it can write anywhere it want. For example, if I have day 2 and if I click on validate again, it is still, if I want to write on day 2 and this is still writing in day 1. Okay, so that is the reason we need to have proper understanding of selectors and we need to use the exact selector. Okay, there is a concept called fuzzy selector where it matches 90% of the item or 80% of the item. That's a different story. But if you want the automation to be perfect, then you need to have a proper selector. Debug. So where it is throwing an error now. Let's go back and see properties. Okay, call stack. Day one. This should work with day one. Okay, so it tried to map with day one, but here it is thrown an error because this is having a full selector. Let's try to remove this one to make this as partial selector so that it will take the items from the top. Properties, selector. If I just remove this one, validate, highlight, so this will go to this one. But this is day2.txt that is coming from this thing, I guess. Debug file, let's see. Day one, this is throwing an error again, remote wrapping. So let's see what is the error. Get window selectors tag not implemented. Okay, stop. Let's see why this is not getting generated. Properties, selected. Okay, target anchorable is null. Okay. Empty field we are doing. The target is what we need. Validate, repair. So the target should be taken from the top. Not sure why it's not taking, but what we will try to do is we will try to add it back and we'll see. So this is what we have, and we will just replace this with star. Validate. Okay, debug the file. So we are just trying to identify where exactly we want to write, and we are writing in it. Okay, now this is with what? This is a desktop environment. Okay, now what if this is a browser? Let's add a browser, add a sequence, browser selector, create. Now let me open something called Chrome, this Chrome. So there is one important thing that I want you to tell. So will something written in Chrome, for example, I have this parent as notepad, but inside I have selected a full selector with Chrome item. Will this work or not? For example, if I'm trying to do the same thing, I'll just do something like this one, or type into again. But in this type into, I'll just indicate use application browser. What is this? Highlight target. Okay, since notepad is not available, we are not able to use it. Let's open notepad with notepad, and let's open day one or day two. Yeah, day one. Now I have this open, then I think this will work. Indicate on screen. Use application, indicate on screen. target. Okay, now indicate on screen again. If I'm trying to map something in browser, it is not giving me the value because we first selected that it should be inside notepad, and inside notepad we are trying to select something. So it is by default restricting me to not to select in anywhere else except the notepad. But what we can also try to do, if you have the classic activities, just let's go with classic and then use type into. So we have something called classic as well. If I just add type into over here, now this will allow me to select anything. F4. If I just want to type into here, I can still type the value I and then enter. So now if you can see here, edit selector. So these are classic activities. What we are trying to learn are the modern activities, but still the concept still remains the same. There are some properties that are added. So we still have the parent, but what is this parent? What is a parent?
Windows application.
Windows application, but this is Chrome app. Okay,
Chrome.
but inside Chrome app, it's going with control notepad and a new tab pane and editable text search bar. So if I just hit on validate, this is what it's selecting, but this is not in notepad, right? If you observe, this is not in notepad, but here if you see, we are using application as notepad, but we are trying to write in browser. Let's see if this will work or not. Okay, so it is doing multiple things, like it's moving from, first it selected notepad, then it went into browser and it came back to notepad. But with modern activities this may not work. This will work with the classic activities. So if you want to add something with something and add the value, you can do that. But if you observe edit selector, why this is not picking up the attached window or use application, why it is not picking? Can you tell why it's not picking? If I go with the next item, this is picking with the, or this item, edit target, or if you can see, this is picking from the parent, right? The selector is picking this value from the parent. Why this is not being picked from the parent? It should pick, right?
Because there are two selectors.
Not two selectors. What exactly is happening is, when we are trying to select an item, it obviously takes a full selector. If the parent is matching, then it replaces it. Since the parent is not matching with this one, it just kept the full selector as is. It's not changing it. Okay, now the same way we can, so whatever we have, this is application, right? Use application or browser. The same way we can use here as well, app recorder, indicate app. So this one, I'll just click on this one. Okay, I'll start recording. I'll hit on this window. Okay, and press F4, shift F4 to select the items. Okay, here I am trying to type in the value. Let me just see if I can type in. Here the thing that's happening is UiPath Web Automation started debugging your browser. It is throwing me some value, but let's save this one. Let's see, just see the selectors. Later we can see what's happening. Here we are using use browser, but the activity is same. if you see, this is a browser activity that came in place, and here this is an application activity. So with latest modern activities, UiPath is able to recognize what type of selector or what type of parent do we have. So that is the reason here we have use Chrome browser, but here we have use application. But if we have something else, then like, okay, if I have something called let me just open a notepad, or let me just add something, clock. Okay, now will this be, what will this be? Will this be an application or will this be a browser?
Application.
Yes, because that is a Windows app that we are trying to automate, or that we are trying to work on. So if I can just click on this one, indicate element on the screen, I can just hit on this one. So this will still use application clock. Okay, so whenever we are working with browsers, let's assume that we are going with Edge browser. Okay, so if I change this one, use element, indicate target on screen, if I go with this one, so this is now using a browser, Edge browser. So with latest version of path, we are able to select, or this is getting updated automatically. But if you are using a classic version, then this may or may not work. This will not work. Okay, we need to go ahead and map each and every item. But the final verdict of selectors is there are how many types of selectors? Okay, I will start asking questions. Please go ahead and type in the answers. Okay, how many types of selectors do we have? Okay, if it is 4, what are they? Okay, see, fuzzy is not a selector, fuzzy is a search. Okay, Soumya? Though we are saying that fuzzy selector, if you go into studio, this documents as well, this is a search. This is a dynamic selector with a fuzzy search. Okay, don't worry about fuzzy right now. You can just so there are 3 types of selectors, you can tell: dynamic, full, and partial. But a dynamic is a part of full or partial. Like a dynamic value can be inserted inside a full selector or a partial selector. So ideally 2 is correct, full selector or partial selector, but dynamic value will be inside a full selector or a partial selector. Like in the same way, fuzzy selector will also be inside a full selector or a partial selector. Just understand that. Okay, now how many types of while characters do we have? Okay, what are they? What are they? Okay, now star replaces what? Star replaces what? Okay, question mark replaces what? Question mark replaces what? One character is wrong answer, Nagraj. 0 or 1 character is correct. Okay, so this is the detailed explanation of selector. So once we start working with the selectors, or once we start going in the next 1 or 2 sessions, when we move into activities, and once we work on what are the different types of small basic projects we'll do. Again, when I say project, it means that there is a small use case that we want to do within that 1 hour period. So that's what we'll try to do, but we'll try to cover or complete most of the things. The next activity or next project or next meeting that we are going to discuss, I'll tell you what we are going to discuss in the chat. So be active or check with the group chats. Don't miss them. Don't mute the notifications, because I'll be the only person who will be sending the notifications, and those are very important. So people who have already completed selectors with UI automation, perfect. If you haven't completed, so today is Friday for you, most probably. Yes, today is Friday for you, so you still have 2 days to complete. I will give you a lengthy tutorial to complete. See, when I ask you to complete, it doesn't mean that you need to sit for hours together to complete. Even though that is for 8 hours, you can make it fast forward and listen it at 2x speed so that you can complete it faster. The idea is, before you come to my session, if you know few basic things, the explanation or the communication will be much more easier than to do everything from the scratch. Okay, that's it for today. Any questions? Yes, tell me. Let me stop the recording. Okay, let me stop the recording.